Choose your own adventure. Management versus leadership on today's episode.
You are listening to the Champion Hustle podcast. Play to succeed in business and in life. Featuring Levi Hunsaker and Ryan Black.
Hello and welcome to the Champion Hustle podcast. This is episode number 31. My name is Ryan Black.
And my name is Levi Hunsaker.
And today we've got a good one for you. We say that every week, but today we've got another good one. Right,
you know
Levi?
We're just going to say we're biased and we don't care because we think that, we have good episodes because we spend a lot of time planning and coming up with content to help you guys out in your businesses. And so we hope you actually take this content and figure out how to apply it and use it in your businesses so that you can take your champion hustle to the next level.
Amen, brother. And speaking of taking your hustle to the next level, we've got a seven-day boot camp, championhustle.com. You go there, sign up, absolutely free, 7 days of business training available there for you so you can get your game on and make 2021 the best year ever for you. So today we have, this is interesting. I love this topic because when you look in the business world, there's so many, the majority of people working in the business world that have some type of, I guess you call it leadership position, they're not leaders, they're managers. And so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or assumptions regarding management versus leadership, what the differences are, and what you need to be or should be in your business, whether you're, the solopreneur, kind of running your own thing, or whether you're leading a large organization. It's really important to understand the differences because they achieve different goals. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I mean, it's possible that you can actually possess both traits. Mm-hmm. But it takes being intentional on how you're behaving. Because even if you are in a job where you are not the owner, where you are the manager, you have certain expectations from your boss. But what about, how can you still be a leader even though you're not in charge? And that actually reminds me of a book. There's a great book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. I don't remember who wrote that, but we're going to put that in the show notes.
Yeah. So what would you say if you could sum it all down to one key differentiating factor? Leadership versus management. How would you define that?
Well, it's hard. There's a lot of factors, but if I had to break it down and say there was one of the most important aspects of that differentiates leader versus management, it's going to be mentality. So a lot of it comes in this idea of, do you push your team from the back or do you kind of pull them along with you while you're leading from the front?
Yeah, I agree. I think I've heard the example before of a dog sled, up in the Great North, right? They do dog sledding where they've got all, the rows of a bunch of dogs and they'll pull the sled. They have different, sporting events and things they do with that. Or I guess they just use it for transportation too. In the when you have that layout with multiple dogs, maybe you have, 8 or 10 dogs pulling the sled, the leader, right? Who's the manager? The manager is the human. They're the one standing on the sled in the back, sending out the commands and telling the dogs what to do. But the very front dog, there's always one dog that's the first in line that is the leader, and all the other dogs will follow what that leader does or what that leader has them do. So it's kind of an interesting analogy, I guess, that there has to be someone. You can't lead from the back. You can manage from the back, but you can't lead from the back. You have to lead from the front.
Well, and it really comes down to, I love that analogy of, the dog sled and are you leading from the front or pushing from the back? Because it comes down to, are you being reactive, handling problems when they come up, or proactive? And proactive, in my mind, is, do you have the vision to see what's ahead and handle it before it even becomes a problem? Or while it's still a small problem before it blows up in your face into a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and like you mentioned earlier, you absolutely can have both. And I think it's important to have both, right? To have both elements of management or managerial aspects, but also leadership, because I mean, you're always going to be leading somebody. Even if you're a solopreneur and it's just you, one man band, there are going to be other people that you're working with, collaborating with, and you want to be able to enroll them in your vision of what it is you want to accomplish. And that requires leadership.
And let's face it, we've all had that manager before that was not a leader. And you know what that feels like, that they are pushing you to continue to give when they're at home spending time with their families. And that's not the type of manager that anybody wants. And people don't quit bad jobs, they quit bad bosses.
Yeah, one thing that I think is detrimental in many companies is because there's such an organized structure, right? Where there's a hierarchy and levels and different people. Sometimes people, they let the title kind of define who they are. And that's when you see that situation like what you're talking about, where you've got just horrendous managers. A lot of times they don't even really do that great of a job, but it's because of the title that they have or the position they have in the organizational structure. So while that is a component of management, understanding the chain of command or the pecking order that people have, it shouldn't define us, because really good managers, whether you're managing people, whether you're managing resources, whether you're managing the execution or the flow or the timeline or the budget or whatever it is, depending on your business, we're all managing different things. That doesn't necessarily have to be a detriment for you.
Yeah. So why don't we dive right in?
Okay.
Let's start talking management. And this is not saying that management is bad.
Oh no.
But if you only hold the traits of management and don't also become the leader, that is where I feel like you're really holding your business back. When you can actually possess both traits, you have the ability to put octane in your tank. Managing is important. You have KPIs, your key performance indicators. You've got to track and manage that. Make sure you're hitting your deadlines and your schedules that you've promised your customers. All those things are important. But being a leader and showing up correctly for your team is just as important. And honestly, when you focus on leadership, I feel like the other things fall in line as well.
Well, yeah, and it's really like kind of like a yin and a yang, right? They go together and they complement each other. Because if you're just 100% leadership and you have no management, all of the minutia, the details of actually executing on your vision are not going to happen. But if you're just so focused on all the details and you have no vision, you're not really going to get anywhere. So both, they complement one another, and they're both necessary, and that's why it is important to have aspects of both. And so, yeah, I think it's valuable to maybe do a little bit of a self-assessment. I know we'll be doing it as we go through, but you, as you're listening, kind of think about where are you at with your personality, with your skill set, with your professional development, as far as, are you leaning more towards the leader side or the manager side? And what are some areas where you can focus on developing and improving so that you can kind of balance your abilities and your skill set out a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some things that, a manager is either responsible for, and we're not going to put labels on these. We're just going to talk about things. These are things that, both Ryan and I have seen as employees, as we work in the business. How does a manager behave? And you can figure out for yourself, is that an effective management style or management behavior? Or is that something that's going to, push resentment onto your team? Mm-hmm. So let's jump right in. So management, the first one is, in management, a lot of it comes in from a defined organizational structure. This is not something, unless you are the owner of the business, that you have a lot of control over. But as the owner, can you organize the structure to be effective, to let your managers be both a manager and manage the day-to-day operations that they're responsible for, and to be a leader for their team?
Yeah. And, kind of going along with that, with the organizational structure, there has to be that chain of command, right? Because you're not able to scale a business larger if it's just this chaotic mess and anarchy. If you look at any large organization, there's a very clear chain of command as things go down, so that you can spread wider and wider and wider. And as long as it doesn't go to your head or to those people's head, right? Sometimes, like I said earlier, sometimes when people get a title, it goes to their head, and that's when you start having the negative interaction. It doesn't matter. You're all part of the same organization. The chain of command is important, though, for organization, for disseminating information, for making decisions, for ensuring that everybody's on the same page with the project.
Yeah, and it's important, especially like you mentioned, as you're scaling that business, that there is that clear definition and everybody knows their swim lanes. That organization becomes important, but it doesn't have to become heavy-handed. And that also goes into focusing on efficiency.
Right.
A business needs to focus on being efficient with the resources that it has. And on the surface level, with a lot of things, this included, that focusing on efficiency becomes really important in concept. It is also important in execution. How you execute driving efficiency can lead you to be, the revered manager or the hated manager.
Right. Yeah, and I think you got to find that balance, right? Especially if you're managing people or a team or a department, is like there's a happy medium there, and some people get it and some people don't. Another thing I think is really important with as far as the managerial hat, as it were, which, by the way, I like your hat, Levi.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. I like your hat.
Thank you.
Even though it's on backwards.
Is a manager really maintains their focus on the customer, right? And whether that's another business or if it's your B2C or what, it doesn't really matter. But whoever your customer is, the manager, that's kind of their end goal. Whereas the leader, obviously they're focused on the customers, but they're focused on other visions and the future, not on, hey, we have this customer right now that needs to be serviced or, an order fulfilled or whatever. That is more of a managerial aspect. And if you don't make that a priority, obviously that can cause some challenges. So the customer focus, super, super important.
Yeah, and along with kind of what we've talked about with chain of command and pecking order is each level of management, in a lot of cases, they have one major responsibility. They're responsible for letting people above them in the chain of command understand what's happening in the business so that they can figure out, do we need to make some tactical shifts?
Right.
And, when you get down to it, that is a lot of statusing, filtering status, because, me as an engineer, my status that I'm reporting on what's going on my projects, the president of the company doesn't really care about those tiny details. They want to know overall how the project is going, but they don't need a lot of the very detailed specifics unless something major is going wrong. But that's a lot of what managers do, is they status, filter, and report.
Yeah. Well, that's what helps you make sure that you stay on timeline, on budget, on everything else that you're doing. In like the organization, large, like a place where you work that has lots of different departments, different projects, different focuses, there are multiple levels of managers, right? And so when you have a, more of a mid-level manager, something that's kind of unique is you have to be bi-directional in your management.
Very true.
You have to manage upward because you have people that you're reporting to as well as downward. And that relationship or that dynamic in the two different directions is going to be different. And just making sure that, your communication skills, that all that is on par so that you're able to make the people that are on the downward side of that feel valued, feel respected and appreciated, and all that good stuff. And on the other side, making sure that you're fulfilling your responsibilities. The mid-level management can be a little interesting.
It's kind of I see it as being between a rock and a hard place sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you've got the pressures of execution, which is challenging in and of itself, and then you've got the pressures of trying to get more efficiencies from above, which is also an important thing, but sometimes it's a, I don't know if it's okay to say it's a battle or a graceful dance. Sometimes it's an ungraceful dance. Sometimes it's a graceful dance. But those mid-level managers, one of the things that I've seen the most of the managers that I've had that I've liked the most is they shield a lot of the stuff that's going on in the upper management levels from the people that are responsible for execution. Yeah. And it's not to take any of the vision or anything else away. There's just some things that are just irrelevant to what is going on, and they can handle that, and a lot of times you don't even know that it's been handled. That's a great manager. Yeah,
they act as a filter and filter all that stuff.
In both directions.
Both directions. Very important. And in management, it's tricky because when we all have the term micromanaging, right? Nobody wants to be micromanaged. But for better or for worse, there are certain aspects of being a manager where you can trust. You should trust in your team members, trust in those people that you're working with, but you do have to verify. Because if you're not verifying, the buck stops with you, right? You are responsible for the work being done by the team, and if it's done incorrectly, you're going to pay the price. So it's
and that's also a tricky dance because you don't want your team to feel like you don't trust them, and if you're constantly checking in and verifying everything that they're telling you, there's that aspect of trust that kind of gets taken away. And so you have to find a way that, okay, I'm going to trust you guys to go get this work done, and just make sure you keep me informed. When the communication stops, that's when everybody has a problem.
Right.
And that goes for business, that goes for real estate, that even goes for your family and other relationships that you have in your life. When communication dies, so does a lot of trust and respect.
Yeah.
So that goes for managers, that goes for employees, that goes for owners of a business, everybody across the board.
Yeah. Should we talk about leadership?
Ooh, let's talk about leadership. Now, think about the things that we just talked about in managers. How can you pick the best, let's not say best, let's say most effective pieces of being a manager, and then marry those with some of these most effective pieces of being a leader, and then you get that octane I talked about. Why do we talk about octane? Well, higher octane means faster cars.
We like that. Yeah. We don't want to be a manager. We don't want to be a leader. We want to be a lead manager.
No, this is not going the right direction.
I
was a little bit worried about what was going to come. Leanager?
I apologize to all of our listeners for this episode. Leadership. A leader. One of the principal things that the primary things the leader is doing is they are instilling in the other members of their group the mission, the vision, and the values that their organization stands for. And that could be, the company as a whole. It could be their department. It could be, a subgroup within their department. It really doesn't matter. But it's what is our mission, our vision, and the values, the culture, right? They instill and nurture that culture within the members. And because if you don't have that, not good.
I like that, culture. So as you think about culture, you talked about mission and vision. Another word that you may have heard about in business is roadmap, and they're very similar, tied in with that. And a leader can actually help people see that vision and mission into a roadmap and help them take ownership and responsibility, their own responsibility for their part in that. And when you can get somebody's buy-in on the mission, vision, roadmap, that's when your business can really take off. Actually, I read a fantastic book for this. I've been reading a lot of books lately.
Yeah, I can tell.
My wife and I started a wellness challenge just before the new year. We decided, you know what? Forget this. We're not going to do a New Year's resolution. We're going to do a Now Year's resolution. And we started this wellness challenge. And basically, we do a lot of things. We focus on mental wellness as well as physical wellness. So I've lost 10 pounds already since then. It's been just a few weeks.
Wow.
That's a good start. That's not my goal. I'm not even sure I'm saying that the right way. That is not the sum of my goal, but that is not even the most important part. Not just the health, but the mental wellness, because we go through and we make sure we're playing and having fun every single day. We're making sure that we're having gratitude in our lives every single day. We're making sure that we're reading, that we're meditating, that we're learning something new. And all of these things go together. And I'm not sure how this ties in now that I have gone down this path. I had a way to tie this in, but it's all gone. That's okay.
Yep.
Ryan's probably going to tell me that he's leaving this in the episode as he cuts it.
Absolutely.
But, it comes down to, can you inspire the vision for somebody else to take that ownership upon themselves and recognize their role and just be 100% responsible and accountable for that? When they... Oh, it was the book, The Energy Bus.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's how we got here. The book. Anyway, while I was reading this book, it was like a big slap in the face in terms of some of my own behaviors. And, it comes down to, do you have people on your bus for where you think you are headed? And give them the opportunity to say yes or no. And sadly, some people will say no, and maybe they don't need to be in your space anymore if they are not on board. Because if they are not willing to lead or be led, you still can't be a leader for those people.
Right.
And sometimes there's not much you can do about it because that's their decision, not yours. Ta-da! Life lesson, and I finally figured out what it was.
Well, if you're going to be name dropping all these books, I'm going to get in on that action, because you're talking about ownership. One of my favorite development books that I've read is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. It is a phenomenal book, and it talks about Navy SEALs and in very dire situations and how they combine. And it's interesting because they do combine leadership with management. The ownership that each member of their platoon has when they're in these dangerous situations, they still have one key person who is the leader and leads them all, but they're all also each individual leaders, and they all manage the situation that they're in, because they retell stories of different things that they've done. Very interesting. And then they relate it to business business applications. So Extreme Ownership, that another great read. And by the way, guys, all these books that we're mentioning, we'll have links to them down in the show notes. So we do recommend them. They're really good books. Another thing that goes along with that is when you're to go back to the extreme ownership, when you're in a battlefield, if one person messes up, like your whole team could die. Like that's kind of the basis of what they're talking about. So you have to focus on the team. That has to be your primary focus, your first priority of we all work together, because if one of us fails, we all fail. Or if we all succeed, right? If we all succeed together, we all also succeed individually. And that's, I think, a big difference when there's a lack of leadership where people just kind of are off doing their own thing. But when you have unity and cohesion and everyone is on the same page, all kind of rowing in unison, as it were, that's when the team will start to see much more progress.
Yeah. I love that, rowing in unison. Now, the awesome thing about that is a leader doesn't sit and watch everybody else row and just kick back and enjoy the high life.
Oh, that sounds
right?
fun.
You know what? I used to think that it would be fun to just sit around all day, and I don't have the patience for it. So for me, a leader is somebody who is motivated, that takes action. Yeah. They show their team how to behave by exhibiting the behaviors that they expect to see in their team.
Yeah.
And, some of the best managers that I've had I also considered leaders exhibit that trait 100%. And it comes down to, are you willing to also continue to put in the work? So, for example, for me, even in business, as I look and I've hired coaches and mentors, when I've looked towards those mentors, if that person was not growth-minded, that is not somebody I want to work with. So, your body is constantly doing something, for example. And as your heart is beating, you're breathing, if you stopped doing those things, you cease to live. You're either growing or you're shrinking. And that's the same thing with your mindset, with your personal development, with your growth in your business, in your personal life. You personally, you've got to be continuing to grow or you're going to shrink. So if I'm going to work with somebody, I want to know that first off, they're ahead of me, and second, that they're continuing to move forward. Otherwise, it's not somebody I want to work with.
Yeah, if they're just stagnant, that's not...
It's not somebody I want to follow.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is in order for a leader to lead, there must be other people willing to be led, right? Like you mentioned earlier. And so, yeah, if well, and that's where the, as a leader in your leadership, not only do you have to show the roadmap and clearly communicate what that vision is of where you are heading, so that everybody wants to go along there with you, but also it's important to, as an effective leader, to be able to motivate, but not through excitement, rather through enthusiasm. Because excitement is just short-lived. It's, people get excited and then it's over. If you, as a leader, if you truly inspire people and boost the morale and really get them on board, enroll them in your vision of what it is, they will be enthusiastic. And when times get tough, if times get lean, if whatever, they will continue to follow in step because they are on board with the vision that you have. But once again, management is, I've got to get this project done because the deadline is Monday, and if I don't get it done, I might lose my job, right? Or I'll get yelled at by my boss, or whatever it is. That's following because you're being managed versus following because you're being led. But
yeah, and if as a manager you're looking at this like, I'm gonna rule this with an iron fist, you might be able to get away with that for a while.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, when you get down into that, and the energy bus actually talks about this very same thing, is if you get into that position where you as the manager, you're going to get fired because you don't meet your deadlines and your obligations, if you haven't led your team correctly, they don't care.
Yeah.
It's your neck on the line, not theirs. I mean, theirs may come following suit, but when you can build that relationship, you can boost that morale, you are very team-focused first, and you've communicated the vision and they're on board with it, that's where the ownership comes in and the trust. This is one of the most very important pieces of leadership, is trust. Because when you are actually a leader, people are following. Not because they have to, but because they choose to.
Right.
And when somebody says they can get something done, and you know that you can trust that person to get it done, you can take that off of your plate, and you don't forget about it, but it's like, okay, I can trust them. They're going to get it accomplished because they're moving in the same direction, getting things done, and they said they're going to do it. And they're going to hold themselves to their word because they have ownership of that task or problem that they've been given. Or I shouldn't even say that they've been given, that they have taken upon themselves.
Right. So if we were to like distill it down, right? We got manager, we said the importance of being both a manager and a leader, right? But if we're looking, okay, a manager is somebody focused on policy and procedure. Somebody who's focused on maintaining value, controlling, monitoring the progress, what's going on, minimizing risks, micromanaging, really focused on the tasks and what needs to be done, and instructs and kind of guides and supports their team. So that's kind of the one extreme. Our other extreme would be pure leader, right? Somebody with vision, strategy. They're all about value creation, moving forward in the organization. They're there to influence, to inspire, to enroll. They're more willing to take risks, whereas a manager is not. They're there to motivate. They're there to be focused on goals, short-term as well as long-term goals, and encouraging others to continue to move forward. So that's the other side. So what's that happy medium? Where do we want to be?
Well, to me, I think it's going to be different based on the makeup of the team. Mm-hmm. And that really comes down to, again, getting everyone's buy-in. Because when you can have buy-in into a team or a project, that buy-in is actually going to dictate the terms of the interaction. So in software, there's a development process called Scrum, or Agile development. Mm-hmm. But specifically, Scrum deals with having one Scrum Master, and their job is to help clear roadblocks, which means they're out in front. The Scrum Master is the leader, but everything else is decided by the team. That's it. The team decides, the leader clears the way. That's it. And to me, that is a perfect analogy for business. You want to be the leader that's going to clear the way so that your team, whatever that may be doing, for us, that's in real estate, and that might be our contractors, our subcontractors, but we want to clear that way so that our team can do the work. And when the team is in agreement and they all know that they're moving in the same direction and the team decides, that is where you can have a lot of flexibility to get things done. So I focus on being a leader first and a manager second. You can't get away without both.
Yeah.
You have to manage the key aspects of a project, but you absolutely have to be that leader first so that people will follow you as you go to achieve the metrics and key performance that you need to hit. And that's how you build long term.
I love it. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed.
So that's my adventure.
I hope you guys have enjoyed today's episode. If you're like, tonight's episode sounds a little different. See, look at that. I slipped there. Tonight's. It's because it is tonight. our schedules this week have been pretty hectic, and so we usually film these episodes during the day. This week, it's pretty late at night. So if you're wondering, why do you guys sound so weird? It's because we're
and why does Ryan look like he's half asleep?
Because I am half asleep. Past my bedtime. But we this program, what we're doing here in Champion Hustle, really is a priority for us. So we wanted to make sure that we got the episode out to you. So we really hope that you found it beneficial and that you're able to, in your organization or in your small business or whatever it is that you're working towards, that you reflect a little bit and find how you can be the one who forges the path, yet also supports and guides in order to make things happen. Because people spend a lot of money on management and leadership training.
Yes, they do.
So it's a very important topic, and one that definitely merits some time and some consideration for sure. Well, Levi.
Alrighty. Well,
what do we got?
We want to wrap it up, but we want you guys to consider, what is your adventure? What are you going to choose in your adventure of management versus leadership? Where do you find, I don't like the word balance, because I don't believe there is such a thing as balance except on paper. But where do you find your most efficient operating mode for your business? We'd love to hear that. Drop it in the comments below, and reach out to us, because we're here. We're here for you. So with that, come on back, head to our website, championhustle.com, get your 7-day quick start boot camp absolutely free, and then join us again next week when we talk about CYA. Cover your assets with proper entities and insurance.
You almost said a naughty word.
I made you guys cover your children's ears.
Cool. Sounds good. We look forward to it. Levi, we'll see you then.
Have a great week, everybody.
See you guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Champion Hustle podcast. For more great content and to join our online community, visit us at championhustle.com.